Because cybersecurity has a technology sound to it, and the mouth from which it is most often heard is a technology person's mouth, it becomes synonymous with a technology problem. Whereas, in fact, I'd say 80% of it is not a technology problem. 80% of it is a management problem.
Welcome to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. In each episode, we dive into the world of industrial cybersecurity. Join us as we cover the latest trends, innovations, and practical insights as we talk with leaders and practitioners across the industry. Gear up and let's get into this week's episode.
Hi, I'm Dino with Industrial Cybersecurity Insider, and today I have a guest, and his name is Robert Maxwell. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining our podcast today. So why don't we begin your journey into the cybersecurity space? I think you've been at it for quite a while, based on what I've seen with your background. So why don't you kind of give our audience just a brief bio on Robert Maxwell?
Thank you. We've been out here for about 30 years now, myself and my team from TGT. We've done considerable work in terms of helping to build applications, helping to improve processes. Our focus is on helping organizations to profit through technology. And about, I'd say 9 years ago, it really came into focus for us that it's nice to build great things, but you better be protecting the great things that you build. And our clients asked us to start thinking about helping them on the cyber side, and we got very heavily into it. And we realized that more than ever, clients need help in terms of thinking about and managing cybersecurity. And we jumped wholeheartedly into it, and we have not regretted the move. Every client that we've met, we've been able to offer some kind of comment, some kind of technology, some kind of process change that has helped to make them just a wee bit more secure. And that's what we're all about.
Yeah, we always say try to get better every day, right? Every day, try to get better. Yeah. So what do you think some of the biggest challenges are in the cybersecurity world?
Without doubt, the biggest challenge is management's thinking about it. Most senior managers that we've met, whether it's a very large organization or a micro business, automatically think this is an IT issue. And that's the first myth that we try to bust. It's not an IT issue. It's a management issue. There is a business risk in terms of the culture of the organization, in terms of the posture of the organization, in terms of the thinking, the planning, the way resources are allocated. And until management and the leaders recognize and address this, they've got a problem, in our view.
Yeah. So do you think that they're pushing it off to IT and just letting them try to figure it out? I mean, in our world, we see that as a struggle because there's a gap between IT and OT, right? And it's just because the responsibilities at the end of the day are very, very different. And there's an OT ecosystem, as I like to call it, that includes OEMs and system integrators and all of the folks in the OT space, which is plant management and production and operations and engineering and facilities that sometimes march to a different drumbeat, right? In their day-to-day activity, the technologies that they're responsible for. And you're right that management looks at it, I think, more micro versus macro for their entire organization.
Our observation has been that because cybersecurity has a technology sound to it, and the mouth from which it is most often heard is a technology person's mouth, it becomes synonymous with a technology problem. Whereas, in fact, I'd say 80% of it is not a technology problem. 80% of it is a management problem.
Yeah, I say people, but yeah, it's not technically, it's a people problem. That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. So what kind of businesses, so have you been close to working with manufacturing clients? Have you had to work with manufacturing clients?
We have done some manufacturers. We've done lots of small and medium-sized businesses. We've done lots of financial institutions. But wherever we go, the problem's the same. Management is busy. The leaders are busy. They don't have time to think. So when you say to them, you got to sit down and think about this, they're like, no, I'm already full up. Just give it to IT. They'll take care of it. And we try to advocate, no, the very first thing you need is a person who has responsibility, overall responsibility for thinking about security. And we don't believe the person has to be overly technical. They just have to take ownership. Ownership is the key word. They need to take ownership of thinking about it and pulling together the people necessary to make it work.
Yeah. So what are some of the strategies that you use to get them to appoint that person, or the tabletop exercises? What kind of conversations do you have to broaden this throughout that organization, broaden the topic of cybersecurity?
We tend to start by saying we need someone who's got a sense of follow up and follow through. Cybersecurity more than ever requires a lot of follow up. You need someone who's good at asking politely the same thing 20 times over until it's done. You need a person who wants to take all of the pieces like a jigsaw puzzle and put them together. So we tend to have those kinds of discussions with leadership about, first of all, appointing one of their rank to have that kind of role. Then we proceed to educate them. There's a lot of time spent in explaining what it's all about, where they need to start, and how they need to just create a global organizational type thinking about the challenge. That's where we like to begin. Not in the nuts, not in the nuts and the bolts, not in the brand of technology you've bought. We're a Microsoft shop, we're a Cisco shop. That's nonsense. It's much more about the who has the overall picture, and like a jigsaw puzzle, they're going to build it out piece by piece till the organization feels like it's thinking about protection.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that one of my colleagues likes to say, especially when he talks about CISOs when it comes to this in the OT space, is they have the responsibility, but they don't have the authority. And to your point of selecting a person, which obviously could be a group, we've seen some of that, right? Where they're bringing, certain individuals to spearhead this OT cybersecurity. But the challenge is that it's too small of a group, meaning that if you've got 30 or 40 or 100 plants in your fleet, one or two or three people aren't going to get it done. You need dozens and dozens, right, to be able to really fully develop your strategy and implement it, right? And educate, right, to the people, because you have to get into these other groups within your OT space and manufacturing, whether it's production, operations, engineering, QA, facilities, your OEMs, your system integrators. There's a lot of players in the space, in my space, when it comes to manufacturing of the devices, the sheer number of assets that you have in a manufacturing facility, some of which are old, I mean, the plant floor assets are measured in decades, right? Not 3, 5, 7 years, like you might see in the IT space. I can have control systems out there that are 20 years old, and we find that on a pretty regular basis. I mean, we still find Windows 7 machines, running the HMIs out on these plant floors on a piece of equipment that's 30 years old.
One of the things you asked earlier was about how do you approach it? And it's about sharing with management. It's got to be their responsibility. If they don't take ownership, it just doesn't get done well. It doesn't get done completely. It just doesn't get done right. So it's about helping management to realize it has to be someone who has reach across the organization. It has to be someone who's understanding the term journey. It's a journey. You can't do anything in a single moment or with a single swipe of the pen to create cybersecurity. It's a journey. You really have to think of it as an investment. We very much advocate investment thinking in terms of assessing your investment, mapping out your strategy, and filling it in piece by piece over time.
Yeah. So are they always looking for an ROI on that investment?
Yes, they are. And we advocate that the first bit of ROI they have to look for is education. You've got to get some kind of cyber awareness product, in my mind, into the hands of many people so that you're getting the whole organization to be thinking about cyber. And that's not an expensive proposition usually compared to the other costs that are incurred.
Yeah. Well, and it's also been kind of minimal too, right? I mean, most of this the cyber to broaden the cybersecurity messaging throughout the organization, the only one I've really ever seen is the phishing emails, right? And you know they're trying to set up setups to get people to recognize good emails from bad emails. But I mean that's been the extent of most organizations as far as carrying that message more broadly, you know, versus it being in a specific silo in your organization that's responsible for cybersecurity. You know, what I've witnessed because if we bring up cybersecurity and the work that we're doing in a manufacturing environment, the OT guys will immediately point their fingers and say that's IT's problem. And they do. It's the easy button for them, right? And then when you really start talking about even IT organizations that are trying to bring a cybersecurity strategy and solution into the manufacturing space, specifically around the control systems, they do everything they can on the OT side to keep them away from the things that are critical that actually make the goods that they make in that plant.
And here again, there's a lack of just general awareness, which is why it's got to start with education. And to your point, it's not just about phishing emails that education needs to occur. It's about the whole frame of thinking. People can respect when you educate them. People educate the points you're trying to make to them. So there's got to be a plan in terms of how you share with people the risks and how you plan to go about addressing the risks. And it's going to take time.
Yeah. So what have you witnessed on the flip side for those people that just ignore it or just they can't move forward, they can't get out of their own way?
We see on several occasions where people get hacked and it's not pretty. We've seen firms wiped out because they've been hacked and they had no plan. They had no consciousness of what to do. They could not react with speed. And these things do require speed. And as a result, the hacks usually tend to be quite catastrophic. And at that point, we're saying to them, look, these are things you should do, but as usual, all of these things take time. We've been in a conversation with senior management where the CEO had to ask just for a moment. He stepped aside and he's come back and he got back on the line and he said, we've been hacked. And of course, we jump right in and we try and help. But many times he was very fortunate. But in many cases, by the time they realize they've been hacked, there's just not enough time to be responsive. So that's why 99% of the effort has got to be on preventing the organization from being hacked, on making all people first, and then all systems bit by bit sufficiently resilient that the hack does not occur in the first place.
Do you feel that there's any external actors, I'm not talking about bad actors, but external organizations or groups that are hampering this strategy being successful moving forward? I guess what I'm trying to say is there, I'm gonna go with consulting groups are the ones I'm going to throw out there. Is do you think the consulting groups are doing a good job or a bad job trying to help these organizations out?
A terrible job.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because most of the time, vendors tend to push the message. So they're pushing a product at a particular point in time at a discounted price. And that is not the way that an organization needs to be approaching cyber. Yes, I respect the fact that every business wants to make a sale, but the organization cyber goes way beyond a particular vendor, a particular product. There has to be a much more holistic discussion. And as I said, it takes a lot of time. It starts with education. It's first of all, it starts with appointing someone and giving them the power. And then it starts with education after that. And it takes time to build the strategy out. And sometimes the place where attention, if you think of a risk reward approach, the area that needs most attention doesn't perhaps need a product at this minute. That'll come down the line at a different time. But you can't be focused on the vendor, what he's pushing, or the consulting firm and what they're pushing this week. There's got to be a holistic approach about it.
Yeah. Yeah, especially again, I'm going back to manufacturing because that's kind of my world is they're not, they're very decentralized in the technologies that they have, right? Most IT groups have done a really good job of standardizing with the technologies that they've chosen, right? Whether it be their infrastructure, their network, their databases, operating systems, computer hardware platforms. But when you get into the manufacturing space, it can be a wide range of things. Rockwell, Siemens, Honeywell, GE, Emerson, stuff they bought in Germany, Italy, South America, odd and end pieces. And you can walk into a plant and there could be, 5,000 assets in there. And 50% is Rockwell and the other 50% is broken up across a dozen or more different technologies in a plant, right? And so appointing that person, they really would have their homework cut out for them because, to your point, you got to think globally, but you got to act locally.
Locally. But until you have that person who has the overall responsibility, who's commissioned to wake up every day and think about how we're protecting the whole organization, until they're empowered to then go appoint people on a per plant basis or to address specific types of problems. Until you've got that person, the person who actually does the work has no protection, has no proper mandate, has no team to back him or her, and can't do the job well. So you pointed out there might be a firm with an organized a fleet with 100 different plants, and you know that you're going to appoint one person. That person needs to focus on their job. They can't be focused on worrying about what other parts of the organization need attention, or am I going to get fired because I'm going to show this particular person up? Somebody else needs to be doing all of that. They need to be focused.
Yeah. And if you look, you think of a CISO, right? Again, typically responsible for cybersecurity. The average tenure of a CISO is like 2 years. I mean, they're not even, meaning, and a lot of them, because they don't have the influence and the authority to really drive the change and or have the money that they to really go after it. And so they're like, I'm not going to be hung out to dry. I'm out of here, right? And then move on. And to your point, assigning somebody that role, it's almost like, what would you call that person, right? I mean, it's what reporting to the CEO, reporting to the board.
Well, I'll share with you the very first thing I would not do is to call him a CISO. I would not do that because that immediately is too limiting.
Yeah. Well, and as I've said, we work with some of the largest manufacturers in the country. We never get phone calls from CISOs, Robert. They don't call us to find out how we can help them while we're working in their plants, doing tens of millions of dollars worth of business with them every year, designing and building and implementing machine centers and control centers for them. That includes infrastructure, that includes network, that's automation technology, a bevy of technologies that we bring in that there is no influence from IT at all in that work. Rare. And so I've always taken the position of I don't think that they really care. I don't think they believe it's their responsibility to figure that out. Maybe I'm wrong.
I agree with you. No, I agree with you. Based on everything we've seen, not just in manufacturing, but in every other industry, I fully agree with you. They don't see it as being their role.
And if you're coming at it from the OT side to at least bring it up, sometimes those folks will actually kind of shut the door. It's not like they don't even want to engage. Like they think they got it figured out. And my thought process is, well, if you got it all figured out, then all the safeguarding that needs to be done, and you have a solution and a strategy in mind, then it should be bleeding through these RFPs that are coming out for us to respond to on the requirements to provide improving your and hardening your cybersecurity posture. And we never see any of that stuff.
And now to dovetail that back into a comment we made earlier, when speaking with senior leadership, whatever they choose to call themselves in an organization, unless and until cybersecurity is a priority and they've appointed that person, and that person is given the responsibility to think organization wide, globally, about how we're going to build our defenses over time. It cannot be an overnight job. It cannot be a this year job. It's a multi-year, multi-plant, multi-person effort. So that's until that mandate has been created, then most organizations are just treading water, in our opinion.
Well, let me throw a monkey wrench at this thing. Let's talk about AI for a second, right? Which I think is either going to be the driving force, meaning that you have to get your cybersecurity situation figured out, the things we're talking about, before you can be really successful with AI.
Agreed.
Do you think AI is going to get in front, or is it going to be the driving force behind this? Because to be successful, I think, is moving forward and leveraging tools like AI, you have to have your cybersecurity stuff pretty well buttoned up.
And most people, unfortunately, don't see the twinning of AI and cyber. Most people think of them very independently, and regrettably, different organizations are being created to deal with it. So the CISO is being told your cyber. AI, unfortunately, is already in place in many areas without the management team even knowing that their people are engaged in AI and using large language models to do many things. So we've got this dichotomy that has occurred. And first of all, there's a need to bring them back together, as you've just commented. But more importantly, there's a need to recognize that even more defensive posture now, even more of a defensive posture is required if you're going to engage in AI.
Now, I agree with that. And again, back to my earlier points, we just do not see a lot of safeguarding requirements coming at us from being a supplier on the OT ecosystem to these manufacturers on what should we be using? Should I be putting cybersecurity sensors and collectors in these machine centers? And what stripe and brand should I be using? Because you're using Cisco CyberVision or using Clarity, using the Zomi, whatever you might be using, if you even have it, because we're developing plans to where in our proposals to respond to what I call the five critical controls for OT, and that is incident response, load access, vulnerability management, right? Defensible architectures, just those basic things that if the client can't provide that for us during project execution, then we're going to do it for ourselves while we're there working for the next 6 months, year or two, it, in order to help ourselves if the client's not going to help us out. If they're not going to do it, then we need to do it ourselves. Bring our own platform in. The data belongs to us for the work that we're doing. And when we're done with the project, we're taking our tools and the data and we're leaving, unless you want to buy it, or if you have the platform and the tools, well, then let's leverage yours then. Can you demonstrate to me that you don't have malware in this plant? Are you continuously monitoring all these OT assets in here? I know the answer to that because if you were, you'd be putting that stuff and laying it at my feet to make sure that I'm watching for that stuff. And here's the tool that you're going to use to keep an eye out for these 30 HMIs that you're bringing in and these three applicational servers that are running OT applications and historians and the 40 PLCs and the 20 switches, all the technology we're bringing into your plant. How do I don't, you don't have any known exploitable vulnerabilities on this piece of OEM equipment that you bought in Germany that I've got to integrate to get this packaging line up and running.
To add to what you're just saying, many devices already collect and share data, but most IT departments just aren't even aware of the data that's being shared.
Yeah, but they're not continuously monitoring though. My experience in most manufacturers, I've yet to see one that's got really 100% visibility throughout their entire plant, much less their entire fleet. I mean, I'm talking major manufacturers. We still got OT people pushing back about putting anything out there that would be collecting that information.
And now to your point about AI, just dovetailing the two, the promise of AI is to collect and interpret all of this data, but most people don't have the safeguards necessary to share that data with a large language model. Most people don't have the safeguards necessary to protect other people from then accessing their proprietary data. And worst of all, most people don't have a clue what people can do with this data to gain access to their organization. It is scary.
Yeah, and I'm talking. You can talk to even the Fortune tens, that have the deep pockets, have these groups and these programs in place, are still not at that level, in my view.
Because they don't have a single person who's been given overall responsibility for cyber. They've got these, as you've commented, siloed people. They've got these people with very limited mandates, and unfortunately, it's going to create a very large challenge for us.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, I've been watching it for a few decades, more last 10 years, really hard, and I still have yet to see an organization that's really got it figured out. And we work with manufacturers every day, all day. You know,
One of the things I'm hopeful is that as leaders listen to conversations like ours, they at least begin to ask some questions. That's the biggest hope we can have, that leaders begin to become aware and ask some questions, because then it gives us the opportunity to share with them, here's why this matters to your future profitability. It all comes back to profitability. Great that you've got a great product right now. Great that you're on a run and the product's selling. But understand that if we're not thinking about these things way ahead of time, there's a chasm up ahead.
yeah. And I don't think that the government is going to help. I mean, the regulations have been kind of toothless in my view. Now, I will say Europe has done a better job with their Cyber Resiliency Act because of some of the things that they're mandating, even though it's over in Europe, we as an OEM, as a manufacturer, having to meet for equipment that we're sending overseas to clients that have to meet certain audit requirements and asset inventory and vulnerability knowledge to that stuff that we're sending overseas. So at least they have a starting point. But here, certain regulatory groups, pushing, whether it be in the power industry, few and far between rail, transportation, there are some requirements out there for them, but even then they thwart most of them. They don't really follow through well. They don't stay on top of it from my perspective, but maybe it'll change. I don't know. Like I said, I think maybe AI will be the thing that'll kick them in the butt, but
But I think it's too late when AI kicks you in the butt.
oh yeah.
It's way too late at that point because your data has already gone out the door.
Yeah. And if you're thinking AI is going to be your competitive edge,
No, no, it's not. We think AI begins to undo much of what they've done, which is why I keep commenting that the conversation starts at the most senior levels of management and helping management to recognize you have to have the conversation. You have to have one of your, we know you're busy. We know everything about how tough life is, but you have to appoint one of your rank. Give them authority to educate, to work with the rest of the organization, because the number of holes that exist, we don't have enough fingers to fill those holes.
well, and you have to wonder where those people go to drink from the fountain of knowledge, because I mean, there's a lot of events that both on the manufacturing side and on the IT side, but the person that you're talking about and that role that they need to play, where would the CEO go to begin this journey, right?
I think he goes to one of his own people that he's trusted, one of his own people who has credibility in the organization, one of his people who's got a strong sense of follow through. There's a lot of follow through required. This is not a once and done. This is okay, we did this today, we're going to do this tomorrow. And they've got to remember there's lots of nefarious actors out there. For every organization out there, there's dozens, if not hundreds of people thinking and plotting about how they're going to break into the organization. So if you don't have an equal or greater number on the inside trying to protect the organization, it's a function of time before something calamitous happens. Yeah.
Uh, as we wrap up here, is there any conversation you want to have with our audience, something that we may not have covered that you'd like to cover?
I'd like to emphasize the need to think of cyber as an investment. Too many leaders are taught to think about cyber as a cost, as an expense, and a trade-off between it and another investment that's on the floor. We need to help leaders to think about cyber as an investment which one makes progressively, one which is expected to pay dividends over time, one which is worth their while. It has to be one of the top investments that any large firm makes in future.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. And if you found this podcast helpful or have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please leave us a review or let us know. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.